It was a gray Thursday when he walked in, an older man in a weathered army jacket, shoes worn thin, hair unkempt from the wind. The regulars noticed him the way people notice a stain on a clean tablecloth. Her manager, Rick Dalton, noticed him too, but for different reasons. Rick leaned toward the counter, voice pitched just loud enough for others to hear. "Guess we're offering charity breakfasts now," he said. Laughter rolled through the room like dropped coins. Clara froze beside the coffee machine. The man stood uncertainly by the window, eyes cast down, holding a few crumpled bills. It wasn't the first time she'd seen cruelty disguised as humor, but this one cut deeper. The jacket, faded green, patches torn, reminded her of her father. Her father, Ray Jensen, had once worn the same kind. A mechanic, a veteran, a man who never stopped working even when his lungs gave out. He'd spent his last years alone in a rented room behind the old post office, proud to the end. She'd brought him soup every evening, sat in silence while he coughed and apologized for being a burden. When he died, the town forgot his name in a week. Clara swallowed hard and turned back to the counter, pretending to wipe a clean surface. She had learned early that silence was survival. You stay quiet, keep the job, pay the bills, endure. But the laughter wouldn't stop, a thin, metallic sound that scraped against the inside of her chest. Rick called out again. "You planning to eat, sir? We don't do free samples." Another snicker from a booth. Clara's hand trembled as she poured coffee into a mug. Something inside her, the same part that had kept her father's medals in a drawer, twisted tight. She looked at the old man's hands, steady, polite, clean despite the dirt in the seams. He didn't speak. He just waited, dignity intact, as if refusing to shrink for their amusement. She wanted to step forward, but fear held her still. Rick could fire her in a breath. Rent was due. Tips barely covered groceries. She could already hear her landlord's voice late again, "Miss Jensen?" and see her own face in the bathroom mirror, tired and too thin. The man turned to leave. His coins clinked softly in his pocket, not enough for breakfast. The door chimed again, cruelly cheerful. Clara stared at the empty space he left behind. Her reflection in the coffee pot looked like a stranger's, someone small and harmless. The kind of woman no one would remember. The laughter faded, replaced by the familiar chatter of plates and orders. But the moment lingered, heavy and sour. She finished her shift without a word, wiped every table until the cloth was gray. When Rick passed by, she kept her head down. That night, the diner lights burned in her mind as she walked home through the drizzle. Her shoes soaked through, apron strings sticking to her back. She thought about her father again, the way he used to hum softly while fixing engines, his hands shaking but precise. "Never let them make you feel small," he'd told her once, on a night when she'd come home from school in tears. "They only win if you forget who you are." But she had forgotten, hadn't she? Somewhere between the bills and double shifts, she'd traded pride for quiet. Clara stopped under the flickering streetlight near her apartment. Her reflection shimmered in a puddle, pale face, diner uniform, tired eyes. She crouched, pressed her palm against the water, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad." The next morning, she would walk back into that diner. Same clock ticking, same walls humming. But something would be different, small, almost invisible, like the first spark before flame. She didn't know it yet, but by this time tomorrow, the world would know her name. The next morning began the same fluorescent hum, coffee steam, and that faint smell of grease that never really left the air. Clara tied her apron tighter and tried not to think about yesterday. She had barely slept, replaying the old man's quiet retreat, her own silence, the laughter. Each thought left a bruise she couldn't hide. Rick was already behind the counter, loud as ever. "Let's keep it moving, folks. We've got a crowd today." He tossed her the order pad without looking. Clara caught it midair, out of reflex more than respect. 8:30, the door chimed. The morning chill slipped in, and with it, the veteran. Same jacket, same calm eyes. He stood a little straighter this time. Around him, whispers started. Rick's smirk returned, that same cruel glint. But before he could speak, Clara set down the tray she was carrying and walked toward the man. Her heart hammered like a trapped bird, but her steps were steady. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "Would you like to sit by the window again?" He hesitated, then nodded. The room had gone silent, every eye following her. Rick's voice cut through. "Clara, we don't serve." She turned. "I'll handle it." It wasn't loud, but something in her tone stopped him cold. For the first time, Rick didn't have a quick reply. Clara led the man to a booth and brought him coffee, toast, and eggs, the same breakfast her father had loved. When he reached for his wallet, she shook her head. "It's on me." A single flash blinked from the corner. A young woman with a camera, a local reporter, Clara realized, had been sipping her coffee near the window, watching. She stood, curiosity lighting her face. "Mind if I ask what's happening here?" Rick blustered immediately. "Nothing. Just a regular order." The reporter ignored him, turning to Clara. "You're the one who served him yesterday, right?" Clara froze. Heat rose to her cheeks. She hadn't noticed anyone watching then. "Yes," she said finally. "He came in hungry, and no one should be laughed at for needing a meal." The reporter's pen hovered. "What's your name?" "Clara Jensen." The veteran spoke for the first time, his voice deep and steady. "You remind me of someone," he said. Someone who still believed decency meant something. Rick's irritation snapped. "All right, enough of this circus." But before he could finish, the door chimed again. 3 people entered, 2 men in suits, 1 woman holding a microphone. Their presence shifted the air. They spoke quietly to the reporter, then to the veteran. Cameras were lifted. Flash. Flash. Rick's voice faltered. "What's going on here?" The older man stood, setting a folded paper on the counter, a Veterans Association letter, embossed with gold seal. "These folks are here because of her," he said, nodding to Clara. "Word got around that someone treated a soldier like a person again." Clara's stomach turned. She hadn't wanted this, the attention, the noise. But then she saw something in the man's eyes, that same quiet pride her father used to have. Rick sputtered, "You can't just." But the veteran interrupted. "I can." And I did. Turns out, kindness still makes headlines. The reporters turned to Clara again. "Why did you step in?" She looked around the diner, the tables she'd wiped for years, the faces that had never really seen her. Then she answered simply, "Because silence helps the wrong side." The words hung there, still and weighty. Rick stepped back, hands tightening on his apron string. By lunchtime, the diner buzzed with strangers. A news van idled outside. Customers whispered Clara's name. The photo, her serving the man with steady hands, had already begun spreading online. Rick retreated to his office, door shut tight. The veteran finished his meal slowly, leaving the letter behind. Clara found a note folded beneath the check. "For your father and mine. H.C." She pressed the paper to her chest. When the lunch crowd thinned, sunlight spilled across the counter, turning the chrome surfaces warm and gold. The cameras had gone, but the air still carried their echo, the soft hum of change. Clara poured herself a cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and watched the veteran's empty booth. The napkin she'd left beside his cup fluttered slightly from the door's breeze, "Thank you for your service," written in her small, neat hand. Outside, the neon sign flickered once, steadying itself before glowing bright again. And for the first time in years, Clara smiled, not for tips, not for approval, but for the quiet truth that somewhere, somehow, her father would have been proud.